A win in week 13 means we have secured a playoff spot in our first season in the Flock League. Now we just got to see if we can make any noise in them. Just want to put a little plug in here at the beginning of the video, super quick. We're getting towards the end of the fantasy football playoffs. It's almost Dynasty fantasy football season. As soon as the calendar turns over, we start talking Dynasty rankings. We start talking about the rookie class coming into the NFL this year. I am covering all of that over on my Dynasty Fantasy Football podcast. It is called the Dynasty Arsenal. It is myself and a friend of mine. We have a lot of fun talking strategy, rankings, all things Dynasty Fantasy Football. If you play Dynasty and you're looking for that kind of content once 2026 is here, or if you're looking to get into it, we are welcoming to new players as well. So go check it out. It's a lot of fun. I'd really appreciate it. So we were able to get it done in our week 13 matchup against Thomas the editor. We go 1-1 against him. He took us down in week 2. We also went 1-1 against the devs. So it'll be interesting to see if that pattern continues with Nick the editor in week 14. But here in week 13, we take Thomas down 135-98. This one started great on Thanksgiving and it carried all the way through. Obviously, I mentioned this in the Flock League video. Maybe I mentioned it in my video last week as well. But because I'm Canadian, I live in Canada, and we celebrate Thanksgiving in October, this Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving, is just a random Thursday with football for me. So I love it. It's one of my favorite days of the year. And it was incredible this year specifically. Starting off with the quarterbacks, Jacoby Brissett. I had dropped him, or was going to drop him in the video last week and ride with Jackson Dart. There was a few comments, one in particular, that was really against that move. And I looked into it a bit more and I was like, you know what? Jacoby's just putting up top 12 numbers every single week. He throws 2 touchdowns every single week. He throws like 250 yards every single week. Why not just ride the hot hand here? Dart coming off the concussion. It ended up being the right choice. Jacoby scored 7 more points than Dart did. And we're going to have this QB tandem going into the playoffs. I don't know when Kyler is supposed to come back. I know he's eligible to be activated off the IR, but they said they're not doing it yet. So we'll have to just wait and see on that. Bo Nix was a little disappointing for Thomas, only throwing for 1 touchdown, not really rushing as much as he's able to in certain matchups. At running back, I think I said if Achane and Etienne could outscore Henry and Dowdle, we'd be in good shape. It didn't happen. The rest of the roster was what carried us. Achane obviously with his classic good game, just under 20 points, 134 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Not a single reception, not a single receiving yard, which he's only ever done one other time is in his entire career. But again, this guy is just the picture of consistency. The fact that he can have a game with no receiving usage and still get me 19.5 points is awesome. Etienne, very disappointing. The Titans, all they can do is stop the run a little bit. The Jags were just able to throw all over them. Jacoby Myers had a big game. Britton Strange had a bunch of yards. So Etienne with a slower game. He is still the starter though. He does still have that role over Tootin. That doesn't seem to be changing as of yet. Which usage and role over points is what I care about in a situation where we're going into the playoffs and we're trying to project how our roster is going to look. Henry on Thomas's side was fine. 17.5 points. It's good. He had that huge reception, which was annoying. And then Rico Dowdle, the Rams were able to stop him pretty nicely. Moving over to the wide receivers, this is where the Thanksgiving swing happened, starting with Christian Watson with his biggest game since he's been in my lineup. Goes for 80 yards and a touchdown. Obviously, he had the huge bomb touchdown. There's always a chance for one of those with Christian Watson, right? And when he's getting 10 targets plus the chance for a bomb touchdown, I mean, in my lineup every week. And across from him, we got really fortunate with Amon-Ra St. Brown going down in this game pretty early, putting up a goose egg, one of his best players, his best player, probably. So having that enormous, almost a 20-point swing on Thanksgiving from one of my lower projected players and one of his higher projected players just set us up perfectly for the rest of the weekend. Tez Johnson in my other wide receiver spot. I don't know how to explain this one. So it was Ricky Pearsall in the video last week. One person in the comments, all caps, wrote, "Don't start Ricky Pearsall," and I was like, oh, whatever. And then I looked at it, I'm like, why would I put him in my lineup? Coming into this week, he had come back from the injury in week 11, was 1 reception for no yards, then 2 receptions for 6 yards. So now I'm looking at weeks 1 to 4, trying to get some proof of why I should play him in week 13. Weeks 1 to 4 is a long time ago. So I sat him down, and the best option I could find off of waivers was Tez Johnson. I almost started Adonai Mitchell. That would have been crazy. I also had Pat Bryant on the roster going into Sunday. Also would have been better than Tez Johnson. It didn't end up mattering, but this was a bit of a blunder from myself, especially with Chris Godwin sitting on my bench scoring 10 points. So yeah, I figured the matchup was good. Baker was playing. Godwin hadn't gotten a full allotment of snaps yet. Tez, they'd been looking at him around the end zone, but he ended up with 1 catch for 5 yards. Across from him, Keenan Allen doing the normal. Keenan Allen, 4 receptions for 30 yards. Gets a few targets on 3rd down. Nothing much to say there. Then at tight end, George Kittle outscores Mark Andrews. I was really worried about the Mark Andrews game. Isaiah Likely ends up with 80 yards. I guess it worked that obviously the Bengals are terrible against tight ends, but the Ravens have 3 that they use, so it didn't end up punishing me too much. Kittle, very consistent, 4 for 67, gets the 10 points. In the playoffs, we're going to need him to score some touchdowns. At flex, our other tight end that we started this week, Brenton Strange, did score a touchdown. 3 for 45 and a touchdown. The Titans actually aren't a good matchup for tight ends because they just get beat everywhere else. But Strange ends up with a touchdown. I will be playing him in week 14 when Kittle is on bye. My other flex, Stephon Diggs. This wasn't really a game ever on Monday night. He ends up with 3 receptions for 26 yards. I try not to take too much information into the future from games like this where it's just not a contest at all. They ran away with it immediately. Why? You're not going to rely on Diggs in these games where you're up by 20 points the entire second half. That's 2 games in a row now where he plays 48% of the snaps, which is his lowest since week 1. Hopefully, the bye gets him right for this final stretch. I do think the Patriots covet having the first overall seed and getting that bye week in the NFL playoffs. And he has 3 really good matchups with Buffalo, Baltimore, and the Jets. So I'm going down with the Stephon Diggs ship. And if it continues like it has the past 2 weeks into the playoffs, then we're not going to win a championship. Simple as. We need him to get back to what he was doing from weeks 4 to 11. Genty and Debo with whatever games on the other side. Debo and Keenan, the combo that I traded for ETN. Obviously, they outscored ETN quite a bit, but they didn't punish me too much this week in their revenge contests. Our kickers tied, and then the Seahawks defense. What a performance here. I mean, Max Brosmer is just... this is why you target quarterbacks, guys. The Seahawks are an incredible defense. It did not need to be the Seahawks in that game on Sunday. That was the worst interception I have ever seen in my entire life. I'm sitting on the couch. My brother is a Vikings fan, and we're watching the game together. And we're just looking at each other after that happened, and I just start dying laughing. Like, the funniest play I've ever seen in my life. He's looking at the sideline. He's facing the sideline, and he just underhand softball pitches it into the air, not even looking where he's throwing it. Like, for no reason, like, it's 4th down, but just take the sack. Just an insane play. Pick 6. They had 3 other interceptions on top of that. Sack him 4 times. 2 forced fumbles. 32 points. The highest score in my lineup. Thomas's defense gets 6 points. What a performance from the Seahawks defense. And we've dropped them, and I'll explain why. On the bench, not a whole lot to report. Obviously, Dart getting 13.5 points. I think he'll continue to carry the ball. Obviously, he didn't do that much in this game. The Giants were down the entire time. They probably want to be throwing the ball a little more. He obviously got blown up on the sideline, an insane hit. But then even after the game, he said, "This is how I've played my entire life." He does need to protect himself. Protecting himself is not the same as not running. Those are 2 very different things. He just needs to step out of bounds. If he steps out of bounds a yard before the defender gets there, he doesn't get blown up like that. So that's the decisions that he needs to be making. It's not the not running. It's the protecting yourself. Ollie Gordon as my handcuff on the bench. Ricky Pearsall, again, disappointing. I want to hear from you guys. Would you just drop Ricky Pearsall? Because he's going into the bye in week 14. Then I'm not playing him in week 15. Out of the bye. So the only shot I have at Ricky Pearsall being effective for us is he has a good game in week 15 on my bench, and then I plug him in week 16 and 17, which he does have good matchups, but he's just holding a roster spot for week 15, which is one of the most important weeks of the year, where rostering my defense that I'm going to play in week 16 and 17 might be more important than having Ricky Pearsall and just hoping he has a good game when he comes off the bye. I don't want to get stuck in a place where I'm getting attached to the fact that I spent the 6th round pick in the draft on him. Most people would tell you you could drop him. I'm curious to hear what you guys think. Chris Godwin, 3 for 78. A good game on the bench. I'm happy with that. T. Higgins was in the IR this week. That's about it for our week 13 matchup. Big dub, and our playoffs are clinched. Let's look at the standings. All right, looking at the league standings here, Sal obviously sitting alone with the bye week at 12-1 and an insane amount of points for. He is the wagon of the league. Mason Dodd, the team of destiny, at 9-4. Then us at 8-5. So we could potentially drop as low as the 5 seed, because if we lose, the Devs win, and Avery wins, they have more points for than us, they would jump us. We'd be the 5 seed. We could also still get the bye. It's not likely whatsoever, but it is possible in a way that other things would be impossible. We're a game back of Mason, and we're about 60 points back. Obviously, it's unlikely that I win, Mason loses, and I outscore him by 60, but it is possible. It is possible. There are other weeks this year where I've scored 160 and Mason scored 100. With all the buys we have, again, unlikely, but it is not impossible. I want to put that out there. We could still get the buy. I am planning, however, to have the 3 seed, which is a great spot to be. I'll end up playing whoever of Thomas the Editor, Bush, Badaki squeaks into the playoffs. I'm fine with any of those matchups, honestly. Thomas the Editor, his team just lost a Monra. Probably won't have him in week 15. That's a good matchup for us. Bush is dealing with the Lamar issues right now, and Badaki's team has put up some big scores, but he's starting a lot of bums. So we're sitting pretty here in the 3 seed. I do think we get a win in week 14, so this is probably where we end up. If we fall down a few spots, we're just going to play the matchups how they come. All we can do is put the best lineup out there and hope good things happen, right? So yeah, Sal, Mason, myself, the Devs, and Avery, we're all locked into the playoffs. Thomas, Bush, and Badaki are fighting for that last spot. That is how the standings are looking heading into the final week of the regular season. Obviously, this is coming out on Wednesday instead of the normal Tuesday. That's because we're doing waivers on Wednesday now because of all the weird sleeper stuff. It's beyond me how they can't figure this out. Sleeper, I mean, the problems with the Monday night, Tuesday morning waivers. But the waivers did run this morning. I can show them to you guys. Let's move over to those. All right, on waivers, there were some big fish this week. Of course, I dropped Jordan Mason 2 weeks before Aaron Jones gets hurt again, and all of a sudden he is desirable. I have no fab left, so I wasn't even in the cards, but he goes for $25 to Dannyland. People are desperate at this point in the season. Jordan Mason's an interesting one because he was never even that good when Aaron Jones went out. I mean, yeah, look at this game log. He scores 23 points against the Cincinnati Bengals, which involved 2 touchdowns. I was pumped, so excited. Yay, I have Jordan Mason. Then he doesn't score more than 13 points again. And JJ McCarthy is terrible. And sure, they have the Commanders, Dallas, and then the Giants. These really good matchups. But it's a bottom 5 offense in the league right now. So I'm not super excited about it. The interesting thing about Danny's claim here is that he drops Bashal Tootin, who is a handcuff running back plus, right? Especially for my team with Travis Etienne. This is where the Ricky Pearsall conversation happens. Is there any way I could convince myself that Ricky Pearsall is more valuable to my roster than Bashal Tootin? Obviously, somebody else might put down a few dollars on Tootin and then I wouldn't get him, but I can't make that argument. Ricky Pearsall might be one of those like landmine players where I drop him and then somebody else picks him up to spot start him and then it goes terribly for them, blows up in their face. You see Ricky Pearsall on waivers and you're like, oh, that's a big name, I should pick that guy up, and he's actually just bad. Which just sucks because I had so much faith, and this PCL injury was really difficult for him, and he comes back, and now he's just not doing anything. And I could convince myself, oh, he'll get right on the bye, get a little more healthy, and hopefully be better. But who knows, right? So that's a tough thing to rely on when I'm trying to put together the best roster possible. And if for some reason a Bashal Tootin takeover or a Travis Etienne injury happens in these last few weeks, he's a guy that could really save my season. So yeah, let me know what you think about that. The other waiver claims, Danny adds Adonai Mitchell, who had a huge week for $13. My opponent this week, Nick the Editor, picks up the Chiefs for $10. They're playing the Texans this week. Then they have the Chargers, Tennessee, and Denver, so some good matchups. Mason picks up the Bills. Zach picks up Devon Vele, who had a big week. Badaki gets the Commanders defense. Thomas, the Editor, picks up Kyle Pitts. Bush gets the Walrus, Darren Waller. Avery picks up the Niners defense. I add Isaac Tesla which is fun. 3 bids for him, all $0. I end up getting him. And he will be in my lineup this week. I need a flex play. Amon-Ra's out Thursday night, so we're firing up the Tesla this week. After Amon-Ra went down, Isaac Tesla played 92% of the snaps, only getting 2 targets. One of them was a touchdown. The guy has 5 catches on the year. 3 of them are touchdowns. That's kind of funny. But obviously his role should expand. They didn't have a full week of game planning with Isaac Tesla because they thought Amon-Ra was going to be playing. So now they've had a full week to game plan him. It's an incredible matchup against the Cowboys. I don't need too much from him. My playoffs are locked in, but he's an easy flex play off waivers. Avery adds a kicker and his defense, the Bears, and Avery adds Isaiah Pacheco. So that is it for waivers. Let's check out our week 14 lineup. All right, a few decisions to be made in week 14. We're coming up against Nick, the editor. We beat him in week 3. And we're looking to do so again, lock up a 9-5 record. That would be really impressive for us. I'd be very pleased with that, especially when we lost 4 out of the first 7. We were 3-4. We're now 8-5. Starting with Jacoby Brissett against the Rams. Why not just ride Jacoby Brissett till the wheels fall off? You know, I mean, he's putting up 18 plus points in every single game. He throws for 2 touchdowns in basically every single game. He throws for 250 yards in every game. And now he's coming up against the Rams, who the one way to get to them is to throw the football. I have to play him this week because Jackson Dart is on bye. But going into the playoffs, it's very likely that, I'm going to play the matchups. He has Houston in week 15 and Dart has the Commanders, I believe. So that's an easy Jackson Dart start. But Jacoby will be on this roster until Kyler is starting. Nick, across from him, has Drake May in his lineup right now. He's obviously on bye. So that was Nick's best pick of the draft, probably. And he hasn't picked up anybody off of waivers yet. So we'll see later in the week who we will be facing at quarterback. At the running back position, I'm throwing out my 2 starters, Achane and Travis Etienne. Not much to say. All I can hope for is Achane stays healthy and Etienne keeps his workload. Across from them is Kyron and David Montgomery. Kyron losing some more work to Blake Corum. Maybe that continues this week. And Montgomery in that Thursday night game against Dallas. Dallas have actually defended the run much, much better since Quinnen Williams came in at the trade deadline. So Montgomery being the backup in Detroit, probably not a huge game from him. At wide receiver, I am starting Montgomery's teammate, Isaac Tesla, like I talked about. And honestly, if he has a big game, he could even be an option in week 15 against the Rams if Amon-Ra is still out. So I like the upside there. T. Higgins, hopefully he is back. If not, we'll have to find a spot start off of waivers. He's against the Bills, which is a fine matchup. Burrow back is huge for him. Across from them, Michael Wilson and Brian Thomas. Michael Wilson, the work decreases a little bit with Marvin Harrison Jr. coming back. And Brian Thomas coming off the injury. Only 3 targets against the Titans. So you're kind of seeing why Nick has ended up at 3-10 here. Just not a lot of excitement up and down the lineup. He does have Brock Bowers at tight end, which is always scary, but against Denver, it's a good matchup for us to be facing him in. And we are playing Brenton Strange against the Colts. Really good matchup for tight ends. Brenton Strange filling in for George Kittle, who is on bye. In our flex spots, starting with Chris Godwin. We're going to throw him out there. After one good game, he has 5 targets. He has 78 yards. The Saints are a decent matchup for wide receivers, so we're going to throw him out there. And Christian Watson in a great matchup against the Bears. He's coming off that huge Thanksgiving game. I'm expecting big things from him down the stretch for us. Across from them is huge Quentin Johnston in that Monday Night Football game. And then Aaron Jones, who I don't think is going to play. So he's going to have to end up playing somebody off his bench here. We'll get to that. Defense, I imagine he'll be throwing Kansas City in his lineup. They are matched up against Houston, which Houston offense looked good with CJ Stroud against the Colts. So maybe he's just trying to guarantee his win in week 16. That's probably what he's doing. He's probably picking them up for week 16 where they're at Tennessee because he's going to have the bye in the toilet bowl. We have the Eagles in there. Now, this is a conversation we need to have. I dropped Seattle. Now, that may seem controversial, but I will explain myself. Give me the floor for a second here. Seattle plays Atlanta this week. Great matchup. Really good matchup. But then, in the playoff weeks, they have the Colts in week 15, really good offense. The Rams in week 16, really good offense. And the Panthers in week 17 can put up 31 on the Rams, who are supposed to be the best team in the league. This entire season, I've been playing the matchups. That's what I want to continue to do. We just saw the Seahawks. Week 11 against the Rams, 3 points. Week 12 against the Titans, 4 points. Any defense in week 5 against Tampa, -3 points. Any defense is capable of this. I trust the bad offenses more than the good defenses, if that makes sense. So I would rather target the bad offenses than just stick with a good defense the entire way through. The Seahawks scored 32 points last week because of Max Brosmer, not because of the Seahawks defense. So we are riding with the Eagles here. They have the Chargers this week. I was going to play the Seahawks over them. I needed the roster spot to get T. Higgins out of the IR, so I dropped the Seahawks. The Eagles with the Chargers this week, Herbert is either out or he's playing a week after getting surgery. So I don't really mind the matchup anyways, but we have the playoff spot locked up. If the playoff spot wasn't locked up, I'd probably find a way to keep the Seahawks. I can afford a little decrease in the expected points because we have it locked up. The Eagles also have the Raiders in week 15, and then they play the Commanders and the Bills. If Jaden Daniels is back, I won't be playing them week 16 or 17. I do have a plan for a defense that I will pick up as soon as I'm able to, really, once I have a roster spot. On the bench, we have Ricky Pearsall. Again, should I drop him for Bashal Tootin? To me, it seems like I should. And the only thing that's stopping me is I'm holding on to the draft capital I spent on him, and I shouldn't do that. But it's really preventing me. Dropping Ricky Pearsall would just be a very difficult thing to do. I think I need some motivation in the comments for that. Ollie Gordon, it is handcuff season. Roster your handcuffs. If HN goes down, my season isn't over because Ollie Gordon would be able to slot right in. Then Jackson Dart on bye, Stephon Diggs on bye, George Kittle on bye. So it's a good thing we locked up the playoffs last week because a lot of our starters are on bye here. On Nick's bench, it's probably Jawan Johnson that he throws out there unless he decides to drop Chuba or something. Maybe he drops Aaron Jones. I don't know. But he's going to need to find somebody to throw into the flex there. And he needs a quarterback. So we'll have to see what he decides to do here. But yeah, that just about does it for our week 14 matchup. 9-5, 8-6, it's all the same thing. I'd like to have the highest seed possible because that 6 seed team is definitely worse than Avery or the Devs. Regardless of who it ends up being, Avery's team and the Dev team, they are just stronger. They have those heavy hitters. I'd really like to avoid them in the first round of the playoffs, and we can guarantee that with a win in week 14. So that will do it for this week's video. There's only going to be a few more weeks of this, and hopefully we get all the way to week 17. I'd love to be able to celebrate a Flock League victory with all of you guys. It's not likely, right? Our team, we're not a juggernaut. We're a little feisty. If we get matched up with Sal at some point in the playoffs, it is going to be an uphill battle. I guarantee you, if we get to the second round, I'm not sure if you guys have seen in the Flock League videos, but we have a rule in place where the first overall seed gets to choose his opponent in week 16, including the other bye week team. So let's say I beat Thomas the Editor, Avery beats the Devs. And the final four is myself, Avery, Mason, and Sal. Sal gets to pick who he wants to play out of the three of us. And if you look at just strength of opponent, we are definitely the weakest team on paper. We can put up some points, no doubt about it, but we are definitely the weakest team on paper out of those three. A matchup with Sal in week 16 would be very scary, but I got faith that we'd be able to take him down. Some would call it delusion, I'm calling it faith. But thank you all so much for listening and so much for being along for the ride this season. This has been an absolute blast. Hit the like on this video if you enjoyed it. Hit the subscribe button. Once again, check out my Dynasty Fantasy Football podcast, The Dynasty Arsenal. Link will be in the description. Good luck to all of you in your final playoff pushes in week 14, and I will see you all at the start of the Fantasy Football playoffs in week 15.